My biggest mission on the planet right now is to know what I truly am. And so everything I do is moving me towards that.
I love what you're doing because I think so many of you wonderful humans, you are making all this accessible. You're not coming from a sort of pedestal, I am high and almighty stand. I think that era of spiritual leaders, community leaders, whatever we call them, the leaders in some way or the other, of being in a pedestal and not being accessible is over. We need to have access to you because we need to know that you're real. You are evolving out loud. I would rather be listening to you and relate to you because you are here. I am. I'm not perfect. I have my flaws, but I'm evolving. And this is what I'm learning in the process. And if I can help you in some way, then that's great. Right?
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest point of what I'm here for is to go, I make mistakes, I'm lost, I have shame, I have fears, and I don't want to even look at myself on a pedestal. I want to be authentic and open and scared and vulnerable too, because I find that by being that, I purge false aspects of myself and access a me that's even more powerful every day. Like real unfolding isn't based on just force and willpower while you deny what's inside. It's really being authentic with yourself and releasing what you're not.
Welcome to the Heart of Show Business. I am your host, Alexia Melocchi. I believe in great storytelling and that every successful artist has a deep desire to express something from the heart to create a ripple effect in our society. Hello to the listeners of the Heart of Show Business podcast and also the readers of the Eden magazine, because as you know, I contribute to both things. One is my own show, and the other one, I am a happy contributor to this incredible publication that is all about consciousness and making the world a better place. And speaking of making the world a better place, I have with me an amazing human, which I just shared with him. Upside down fandom. Yeah, The Illusion of Money. Incredible book. Kyle sees he's not only an incredibly well-known and successful comedian, stand-up comedy. He's been on shows with like Martin Short. As I freestyle, FYI. People love that. So, he's been on movies like, 10 Things I Hate About You. He has written this book, Fandom, The Illusion of Money, with Kyle Seeds right here. We're going to talk about money. And he is also a motivational speaker. He's a best-selling author. He did a documentary about money. So we have so much to talk about because, Kyle, you started out as an artist. And there is this whole thing about being a starving artist. So let's talk about that. You transitioning from being a comedian to writing a book about money, and welcome to my show.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I don't even know which thing to start with. You had a few different questions. I mean, so I definitely started performing stand-up comedy as a child. It was in my family. I was very used to I had an uncle that was a prop man for the comedian Gallagher in the 80s. My grandma was a famous puppeteer. She was on the Carol Burnett show. So I saw comedy and entertainment a lot in my family. And at 12, I started doing comedy clubs. At 15, I was a middle act for stand-up. And then at 18, I was a headliner. And I started touring the country at 18, 19. And then I booked 10 Things I Hate About You and then Not Another Teen Movie at 20 and 21. Did probably over 1,000 colleges as a stand-up comedian. Also, headlined most comedy clubs in the country. Did hundreds of corporate events and all kinds of different things. I think one of the biggest things that I learned was that we live in a lie, and the lie is when something happens, I'll be happy. As a comedian, I always thought, when do I get the next gig, festival, talk show, late night show appearance? And I watched all kinds of other comedians get those, and they were even more stressed going, when do I get the next thing? Or how do I not lose this? And I think that there was really something big that I was identifying where I was more and more, I would get what I wanted and not find that happiness. And, it was fun and exciting, but I was living in a next stage all the time, thinking, when is the next thing? When do I achieve this? And at one point, I remember booking a movie, not another teen movie, and going through, I just want to get to producers for this audition. And then I got it. And then I was like, I just want to get the part. Just give me the part. And then I got the part and I shot it. Just make sure my part stays in the movie. Then the movie came out. My part was in the movie. Okay, make sure the movie is a hit. Make sure I get another movie right away. I was always in the future. And I think that we live there. I think that everyone watching this knows that feeling right now, that they're thinking of when I finally get over this addiction, when I have the breakthrough, when I figure out why I have this issue, when I make enough money, when I get through the divorce, whatever it is, then I'll be happy. And there's something to me a little bit insane about this, even though the world has totally normalized this. Just because the world's made it normal doesn't mean it's the truth. Just because society all collectively agrees on a specific thing, that doesn't mean it's the truth. And there's a way that I believe that that's available for us to live in, that's actually the truth of how life works. And I don't believe there's a lot of things that we've been taught that are the truth. I don't believe that attachment and love are the same thing. Like every movie makes every love story, and that person's the one, all those things, and that can happen. But at the same time, you're saying this is love, but I just want to say that's attachment. And we've taught ourselves you are what you do versus what you are, and your love for what you do. So people often say, even when they're meditating, what do I do? What do I do? What's the next thing I do? And there's not an understanding that you're also loved, period, no matter what you do. And it's amazing to start from there. It's really amazing to get to a place where you're more and more closer and closer to becoming the love that you are, versus thinking I am loved for what I achieve. Because I've achieved a ton of things and still, I felt loved on a surface level. I felt loved for those achievements, but they're really approval, and they're really you kind of think about what they're loving you for. It's like, because I can help them, or I look good to them. It's like being loved because you have a Ferrari. It's not love. It's like you're just using everyone's just using each other. And so for me, the revelation of when something happens, I'll be happy is a lie, kind of shifted me to the beginning of something new, which was, what if it's when I'm happy, things will happen? And by happy, I mean okay with every feeling that I'm having. Okay with feeling off, okay with feeling sad, okay with feeling anger, whatever, and getting more and more connected to this feeling where I'm not as close to the attachments of what's going on in the external, but more closer to curious about what I am. And so at one point, I noticed that the more that I went inward, the more that it started to call to me to let go of everything in my life that started feeling really heavy. Addictive foods, alcohol, at one point, Facebook, at one point, all kinds of different stuff. Let go of my attachment to it. And this was when this revelation came through. I was doing this with my friend Diego, and a sentence that he said while we were doing this was, when you let go of something, you're only stressing because you can measure what you lose. You can't see what you'll gain. And I started getting fascinated by, instead of being in the motivated world of making something happy, letting go of every single thing that doesn't align with me, that I feel like I have to do, but isn't what my soul is calling me towards. And every time I let go of something heavy, it made room for more magic. And at one point, my comedy career, which at one point was a total dream career in my life, became heavy. And I just found myself not interested in touring anymore. I didn't want to go to the middle of nowhere and stay in a room next to an Applebee's and perform at a comedy club for the week. I just didn't want to do it. And I started saying no to that and not knowing what would be on the other side. And a whole new world birthed, where I started feeling guided. I started finding that I was letting go of all kinds of energetic heaviness of my childhood, my stories. It's interesting because I still am finding more as I keep doing this work. There's still, after 14 years of that career, I'm finding right now, I can feel in my chest today even a wounded boy, but I'm just right here with him right now. And I think we're getting to the crux of everything that's a lie in my body. And so I, 14 years ago, started letting go of everything that didn't feel aligned. And it started birthing this entirely new career, me working with Michael Beckwith, me working with Eckhart Tolle and Jim Carrey, starting to find this entire world of me performing in a world where I was originally thinking, well, what I want to do, no one's ever done that. But it was like, yeah, no one's ever done that. What would happen if I combined comedy and transformation? And I started performing at everyone's seminars and different, I was working more than ever, and then doing the lecture circuit at colleges. And it was interesting because, I was creating something that was just Kyle and making more money and being more successful and being more connected to myself. And we started doing really big theaters. We did the Dolby Theater where they do the Oscars. We had 3,400 people in the audience. And I did 2 books. One is a New York Times bestseller, and the other one's Illusion of Money, which I think is better. But yeah, this is just what's unfolding. And it's really interesting to say the word unfolding, because the ego goes, I want to achieve something that I can see what the outcome is. But think of an acorn, can't see the entire forest that's inside of it. So when you start unfolding, it's a lot different than achieving. Achieving is I see what I am now and I see what I'm capable of. But if I can see it, then I'm not necessarily changing me to become it. Unfolding is there is a magical forest inside of an acorn. I am curious about what I am. So it's required much more surrender, much more allowing, much more listening, and then letting go of what isn't true, and moving closer and closer to what I truly am. And my biggest mission on the planet right now is to know what I truly am. And so everything I do is moving me towards that. It's bigger than how many books can I sell. It's bigger than, in fact, I would sacrifice those things if I have to find out the truth of what I am. And every day I find a little bit more of some energy that comes up that's hurting, and it's a kid that's doing something so he doesn't get yelled at or wants to be loved or whatever. And I sit there and listen to him, and it turns into tears and it leaves, and I'm closer again to what I truly am every day. And so that to me is the number one goal, more than how successful can the business be. In fact, the business is a byproduct of my connection to myself. So the business that I have is called Evolving Out Loud. And it's called that because everything I'm doing, I'm going through my life in front of everybody. And, you watch me go from an achieving stage to a vibration stage. Now you're starting to watch me go through into a oneness stage and, get more and more and more excited about here than high. I'm much more fascinated by here than going to a high vibration when all vibrations exist within you. And so Evolving Out Loud is what we do and what my events are called. And they're miraculous.
I don't even know where to start, because every single thing that you said is a trigger to talking about something else. But what I think stands out to me the most is that, as I notice of what you're talking about, it seems that the energy of love and the energy of money are very similar, because we're all obsessing many times about having it. And when we have it, it's not enough. Or when we don't have it, we mope around about not having it. And I love one of your quotes in your book that it says your obsession with money is costing you millions, which I think is also applying to the pursuit of love. So why do you think we as humans are always striving for seeking love and seeking money, or both things, in order to feel like we matter?
Yes. Well, the first thing is you have to be under the illusion you don't matter. So money matters more than you is already the lie that people are in, right? And that concept is so funny to me, because one thing that I love to do is just go, what's true here? And here's a sentence that's true. Every dollar you ever made came from you. So you're bigger than money, because you're the source that created the money. So if you've ever made $1, get excited about you, not money, right? And so what people do is they create the illusion that what I am and the unfolding of what I am isn't that big of a deal, and getting to $10 million is. But this is a really weird thing, because you're the source of the money. So you're focused on the wrong thing. And a great example would be, I've used this in my book, I think, but If you and I were in the woods and I walked away from you for a second and I found a waterfall, an unlimited waterfall, it's just pouring, wouldn't it be weird if I grabbed a cup, filled it up, ran back to you with just a cup of water and said, look, a cup of water? I'm only showing you the limited amount of water. I'm not showing you the source that it came from. But if I showed you just this cup of water, you'd look at it like money and be like, do we have enough water to pay the rent? Do we have enough to share it? I can't donate any of this water, because you're looking at a small supply. But if I showed you the entire waterfall and was like, look, there's an infinite supply, you would go, oh, well, let's share with other people. Let's get all the bills paid. Let's pay off the mortgage. You'd move very differently. And we move differently based on the mental lie that money is a finite thing. It's so interesting because money is so unlimited. They're even printing it all day. It's not worth anything. You're worth everything, but they're printing money all day, every day. Inflation is just the constant printing. The government is just making counterfeit money all day. Because if any human just printed it, it'd be totally illegal, but the government just prints it all day. Totally devalues the money because it's everywhere now, right? And so you have to start out by seeing it as infinite, and you have to start out by seeing you as infinite. You are such a magical unfolding. And every time you make something outside of you bigger than you, you shut off what you are. And you say, that thing outside of me is my God. And so often we do that with everything. We think that, it's so funny. A good example would be, I used to think if I get a good agent, then I'll get movies. But every movie I ever booked was without an agent. So the thing that I thought that I needed was actually in the way of me actually just getting it naturally. In other words, I'm not saying an agent is bad, but it was when I would let go of the need for certain things and the need to have it be perfect. I booked 10 Things I Hate About You as my first audition, with a casting director just calling me because I took her class. I was up against 500 people, but I was oblivious to that anything was wrong. I didn't have in my head, I have to be trained, I have to have this experience, I need to have headshots, I need to have an agent. I walked in there with no headshots, no experience, but I was so oblivious to that was a problem that I just absolutely became Kyle. And I not only booked it, but it was originally like a 2-day part. And after I booked it, they rewrote it to make it bigger and made it a 6-week shoot for me. And so I started learning that by being me, they were revolving what I was doing around how much I was me. But if I have to shut me off to keep something in my life, to not look bad, to whatever, then I'm saying this thing outside of me is more my God. My unfolding isn't that big of a deal. I need to stop the acorn from growing. And you're saying this thing outside. So if you want love in your life, want to feel the love that you are right now, versus going, the only way is through a relationship. And then as a byproduct, you will find other people that are doing that same inner work, that are able to do the healing that with you, that you're healing. Because if you go outside of me as the answer, then you'll only find other people that are codependent on you. So you're just two addictions staying together, stopping your truth, cutting yourself off from the true you that's trying to unfold. And you'll just eventually have to fall apart to get back to the natural unfolding that you are. So we got to understand that we are love. We are abundance. We are infinite. And ask yourself, what am I? What's in the way of my feeling what I am? I've noticed one thing that's been in the way for me is scrolling through YouTube and scrolling through, conspiracies and scrolling through politics and all kinds of stuff like that. And at one point I realized that has a frequency. And when I grab it, I'm grabbing an old, heavy third density frequency, even if it's some truth of what the government's really doing, or it's still heavy. And it's still not the unfolding light that I can bring to the world if I stop grabbing it. So I've been getting really fascinated by not grabbing it. And immediately I'm starting to find all kinds of deeper wounds that were covered up by my being involved politically and all this stuff. And it's like telling me to become the light even more that I am. And don't try to change the world on the external. Change you and the world will shift.
That is such an interesting answer, because you have also a quote about who you become is the most important thing. And I realize sometimes, and I speak about artists equally as people who are heart-centered and they want to make the world a better place. There is this longing where we want to give of ourselves. And, you know, as an artist, you say, I want to be able to act and to perform and to make people happy and to make people feel something. But I got to pay the rent. You know, we don't have a 9 to 5 job, right? Either as life coaches or motivational speakers or artists. We are there to be the light bringers. Many times we feel we have a purpose that is greater than ourselves. But then there is the reality of, well, I want to save 100 dogs, but I don't have the money to rescue 100 dogs. How do I do that? How do I get over? How is it possible that when we have such a big calling about making the world a better place, still the money seemed to be the only thing that is stopping us in reality, as we call it, right? I'm being devil's advocate here, just for the listeners and the readers.
I think this is how I see the world. I have seen so many people have callings that they think are 10s. Do you know what I mean by that? Like a 10 in my soul, but are really 9s. Meaning like the amount of callings I hear that are to change something, but then I can almost hear the pressure and the energy of so that I'm not a failure, so that I'm not shamed, so that I'm not irrelevant. And I find that there's a lot of trauma in our childhood, and then we think the world is like our childhood. So if you had parents that said you'll never amount to anything, you could either become that and prove that to yourself, or pendulum swing the opposite, like I'll prove to my dad he's wrong. And then you get these things that you think are callings, but they're actually your covering up of your wounds. And so I can hear in a frequency when people are talking to me about what they have to do to change the world, I always ask them, if you don't do that, what are you? And very often tears start to show up where they're like, I'm not enough, I'm a failure. It's all these deeper fears. And I believe when 2020 happened, we went from just thinking positive to having to look at some darkness. And darkness isn't bad. It's just unseen energy in your body. And I believe the universe is trying to get the dark lies in our body out. So there's been a lot of old self-help that's about achieving and getting to the other side and making it happen. And a lot of that is so that you don't feel unloved, because in your body is some deep wound that is under the lie that I'm not enough, that I'm unloved, that I'm a failure, that I'm bad, that I'm whatever, that I'm my parents. A lot of people have, I don't want to be my parents. So they often become whatever they can to not be their parents, right? But then you're still holding on to the energy of the shame and judgment of the parents and still using that as the motivator to do something else. So it's not necessarily God. It's just don't feel trauma is the calling. So because of that, life will mirror to you, hey, this isn't your actual calling, by making a lot of results not happen, by making a lot of money not happen, by making whatever it is. So I think that there's a lot of people that do this thing where they're like, my calling is to change the world. My calling is to do this thing. And that's great. But first because find out what you are, because I have changed the world as an avoidance of the discovery of what I am before. And I've seen a lot of people do that. And life is going, yeah, that's not the highest truth. That's your egoic addictive fix to not feeling this thing. And I'm more fascinated by what I am than what I can do. And so I find that the more I am connected to what I am, it doesn't give me these giant missions. It gives me this nice step-by-step thing. It might say, forgive that person, throw an event, but it doesn't give you this 2-year plan, because every day you're unfolding. And so it'll have something new. So the universe doesn't give you a giant planned scheduled thing. It just gives you next steps now. Let go of this, say yes to this, say no to this, right? So a lot of our unfolding or our callings, I find, are actually escapes from deep wounds in our body. And so there's a whole world of self-help people that are like screaming what they know what their mission is, and they're this healer and they're doing this, but they're doing it to avoid what's in their body. And so we got to look at what really hurts and surrender and be in a little bit of a, I don't know what to do, and listen
Mm.
so God can talk to you and do things through you versus just you now know what to do. Oh, I now know my purpose. That thing I think is a lie. I now know my purpose. A lot of times you can, but you're grabbing onto some identity to not feel the wounds in the body. And we all are growing up with a lot of trauma in our body, and it's trying to come out now. And it might just be a lot of, I don't know, sit in the woods for a month and do nothing. Don't grab your phone and just listen, and quite a bit of new answers will come through.
I love what you just said. And it's just like ding moments for me as working with so many actors and filmmakers and writers and producers that are all having this thing. And I always say there's a saying now, even in the self-help community and in the artists, like, who do you help and how do you help them? But I think that, like you said, before you even get to that, it's like, how do you help yourself? And who are you? Just like you said. And I find it fascinating that you talked about the pandemic, because what do you think? And this is what I've observed. I could be wrong. I thought that after the pandemic, we will be more compassionate, more loving towards one another. And it seems to me, just like you said, that there is even more negative energy coming out of that versus haven't we learned our lesson? Haven't we learned to enjoy nature? Haven't we learned to be kinder to one another, because life is such a finite thing? And yet there's so many people who are angry out there and nasty and mean. Why do you think that is? Have we not learned our lesson?
Oh, there's a big reason that's happening. And actually, what if I told you I think that's great? Because, and this is what I mean, in our body is some anger and pain, and a lot of us have used positivity to bury that. And in an old consciousness, that worked. Like in an old consciousness, the spotlight wasn't on these wounds and the anger and these different things. In other words, in 2006, The Secret came out and taught you to think positive. And, 10 years before that, everything was achievement-based seminars, and it was awesome, and you can make it happen, and that's great. And there's all this think positive, and the idea is that the negative is bad. And in our body is a child that might have been yelled at, abused, hit, shamed, scared. All these things still haven't been processed, right? Now, one of the things that the old world has taught us is that we are what we do and not what we are. In other words, we are the now. You are not your whole old identity. You are not your old accomplishments. But because we think we're dying right now. We think everything's threatening us. We think everyone else is threatening. Nothing's threatening what you are. But if you're identified as I'm an achiever, God has to undo the achiever so you can see the root truth of what you are, right? So a lot of identities right now, imagine like everyone put on costumes as protective mechanisms. Everyone up until 2020 was wearing costumes. I'm a codependent. I'm an avoidant. I'm this story. I'm this ethnicity. I'm this money. I'm this whatever. And now every single false costume is feeling threatened right now. And so that anger is actually probably better than if we were all in a big self-help fake denial smile, because the anger is at least a sign that we're getting to darker, deeper places and these energies can be felt, right? Eventually, most of our costumes are going to fall. The story of me as a stand-up comic doesn't exist anymore. I literally did all these huge things as a stand-up comic, but I can't go back to it. I can't go be it, And so I surrender that identity. Even the way that I've done my events and the absolutely everything past and evolving out loud, that's always changing. I'm infinite change. I'm just the now. So imagine that all kinds of costumes that we've worn, a victim, I'm an achiever, all these different things are being attacked right now. But if you get present, you can let the thing that's being attacked, or the childhood you that you created to not get hurt, can die. And and one of the things that's happening right now is a lot of people are feeling depressed and suicidal. And one thing that I offer people is it's never actually you that's suicidal. It's a pattern, and the pattern can die. And so sometimes a me that achieves a bunch and gets a bunch of approval from people wants to die. And I'll take a deep breath and tell it, you're allowed to die in my body. And so it's never you that wants to die, but you can easily be identified with a pattern that you learn to bond with your parents or protect yourself from your family or whatever else. Those patterns are coming to light. Narcissism is coming to light. Control is coming to light. If it comes to light, it dissolves. So the way I find to move through this time, first of all, is to bring a lot of meditation in. I listen to silence at least an hour a day. I'm on a lot more hikes. I cannot grab on to addictive things right now because they block me from healing myself. So it's very easy to want to grab alcohol or weed or overeat or, scroll through social media, whatever. And I find that when I do that, I'm covering up the boy inside that's ready to die because there's a man here that's trying to form. And so me as a God, I'm God's kid. I'm not my parents' kid. I mean, I came from my parents, but my parents had a bunch of egos too. And so I trained myself with my ego to protect myself from their egos. And I'm actually God's kid. I'm the now's kid. I'm the infinite space that's an expansive, magical being. So the only thing that's dying and falling apart is the lies that we're not. And life is making your business not work so you can find that this is what you are. It's making many relationships not work. If it's not based on truth, it's not going to work. If it's not based on expansion, it's not going to work. Everything that's based on control is falling apart. You can't control anything now. You can't control your breakthrough. You can't control what people think about you. You just have to become surrender. So it's actually really magical because we're moving to a time of infinite surrender, and everything that's based out of control, which is what the ego created to not feel trauma, is dying. Right. And then the trauma inside is also alchemizing and coming to light too. So it's actually a really exciting time if you understand what's going on. And it's a horrible time if you don't. But if someone's watching this, at least they have some insights to go, like, life is going to shift you whether you want to do it or not. So I'm going to recommend wanting to do it. I'm going to recommend going, I'm going to participate with God and be a part of this unfolding and let whatever's not me fall apart and move to the true essence of what I am.
Wow, that is such an amazing way of choosing a path or whatever you want to call it, choosing the now for your self-evolution. Now, I know you spoke about your parents and you are a dad. I know you have a beautiful daughter. And what are you teaching your daughter? Or are you even teaching her anything? Are you allowing her to discover all the things that you're discovering on her own? How do you parent?
What a great question. I'm so honored to answer that. One way I parent is by being as authentic with myself and expanding myself that I can be. I think that she's just learning that she's an adaptable, changeable being. So she might grow up and not see herself as her patterns because her dad shifted himself right in front of her. I also see her as encoded with her own guidance system. I see her as she knows quite a bit of what she wants. I mean, there's aspects where I step in, like I won't let her have 10 ice cream cones in a row. I won't let her run into the street. I'm here for her safety and guidance. But at the same time, there is a collaboration of really hearing what she wants, because she's an infinite being. And one thing I'm not here to do is shut that voice up and make her scared of my control or my discipline over her. And even though sometimes it can be hard where she'll be crazy all over the place, I still want to let her experience that so that, so that she can keep finding her own self while I still create safety and boundaries and different things, but really want her to know that her magic is inside of her and not in you just do what I tell you. So there's a collaboration on, but there is still rules like going to bed. She always wants to be up later, and I'll tell her, like, if you go to bed by this time, you get 2 bedtime stories. But if you miss that time, then it'll be 1. And so there's it's not punishment, it's just choices. And and it still gives her leverage to want to do a lot of times those things. And but there really is a lot of you can choose, and so, like, she's going to wear her seatbelt in the car, but you can choose if I put it on or you put it on, so there's a choice and a feeling of a choice, but there are some non-negotiables. And then everything else is, what do you want to do? Do you want to create? Do you want to go play? Do you want to ice skate? Do you want to paint? Do you want to watch something? Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk emotions? Sometimes we'll have rides and she'll ask me existential questions. Like she's 6 and she was in the car a couple weeks ago and she said, who was the first person ever alive? And I said, it depends who you're asking, but we started getting fascinated by it. And then this idea of, was she around before she went into her mom's body? Was she, like, how was she a light being that came in? And we live in an I don't know, but I'm open to, I don't tell her a specific thing. I let her investigate and come up with her own thing. So, and I think the biggest thing, I just put out a video a couple days ago that a teammate made with me that is my favorite video.
That. And with moments, we only have moments, right?
Moments. And the point of it was, I was on a drive for a couple hours and I decided no phone, no music. And then at about an hour in, this like bubbly memory came up. And I had this memory of when I took her when she was probably 3, paddle boating. We went in a paddle boat and she might have been 4, I don't know, but it was 3 or 4. And she was in this paddle boat and it was like this memory that just showed up and it was so sacred. And I realized she was a different size with different cells, with different everything. So I had this moment where it's like, I don't even have a daughter. I have this infinitely changing, bigger and bigger being that's different every day. And then I applied that to even adults. Like, every person in my life is different cells every day, and I am different cells every day. So you start to go, well, what am I? Because I can't be anything I believe right now, because that'll change tomorrow. I can't be the body, that'll change tomorrow. I must be something so beyond that. But the point of the video is that I started really getting, and in the last 6 months, really understanding that all of this is temporary, that my time with my daughter is temporary. At one point, I and even she won't even be a memory on this planet. So it's because of that I can love her so fully. See, ego gets scared to love fully because it will lose it, but I know that I'll lose everything. And that's why I can love fully. See, the God you loves fully, knowing it's temporary. The ego goes, I don't want to get hurt, so I won't. I only want to love if I know I have something forever. So it already has a lie going, because we're all going to die. And so this unfolding in the now is so fascinating to me. But yeah, I have the most magical daughter, and she's a magical unfolding, and she's a different size and different voice and different. She now at times wants to put herself to bed. I used to hold hands next to her, and sometimes I still do, but some nights she'll go, I'm going by myself. And she just walks and closes the door. And it's a little emotional because I love that she's got her own independence going. And there's a part of me that goes, well, she doesn't need dad for that.
That is such a beautiful portrayal of a loving parent and the experience of being a parent and watching a being evolve and grow, whether we like it or not. And I love what you said about the moments in that video, because if we even want to compare, because art imitates life and life imitates art in so many ways. If we look at movies or TV shows, what are the things that we talk about the most? It's not the movie per se or the show, but it's the moment in that movie or show. So even in the art of storytelling, the things that are most memorable. How many times you think about something and go, oh, remember when that happened in that moment where the actor said this or this happened? Sometimes you don't even remember the plot. How does it end? How did it begin? It's all about the moment, right?
Yes.
And so I love to look at life that way. And I'm going to have to ask you in closing, of course, and as the last question is, what is the next moment for Kyle?
I mean, I really only know this moment for Kyle, but I mean, I'm just listening, and more as I do this work, I know there isn't a Kyle.
Mm,
Like, this is a really weird premise, but like, what Kyle was in the past, I can't go to. I'm
mm,
so infinite changing. The idea of Kyle really is based on what I created to protect myself. And I think that for everyone watching, what you know of as I is usually something you created to maneuver through parental egos and to figure out, and so this I can achieve, or this I knows how to protect itself, or this I knows how to stand up for itself, or this I doesn't share its voice. And then we attach an I to a pattern. And I really have no place that I can actually find or locate what Kyle is. I don't believe I'm the body. It changes too much. I've been on ayahuasca and saw it as a separate living being from me. There's no way that's me. And so I'm more and more and more the moment. And this space that I listen to wants to undo more and more of the trauma me from this body and from this field. And the more I merge and listen through meditation to the now, the more it just starts to cause those things to purge. It causes the false traumas to leave, and it causes really expansive, magical next steps, ideas. There's $1 million ideas in those meditations. There's the answer. There's a whole new world trying to birth through us. And most people on the planet are really caught in what's going on everywhere else in the world and missing out on a really magical aspect that we are. And I really love David Hawkins. I don't know if you ever read David Hawkins.
of course.
But I really believe that the greatest contribution that can come from this body is the connection to the truth of what I am more than what I do. I've read how a person at a frequency of like 700 counterbalances millions that are under 200. So at one point, the more you go up in a light frequency, the more you can counterbalance the world and make it a world where you can't have wars. There just can't be control. And,
Hmm.
if you have one person cross 600, I feel like that's 70,000 people under 200 are counterbalanced by you. But if you go up to 700, it's like 70 million, something like that. It's crazy. I don't have the numbers, but the essence of the point is find out what you are more than just what you can do. Because I'd rather be a 700 doing nothing than a 500 selling 1 billion books. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather know what the frequency is of what I am and watch the dissolving of what I'm not. So the more I do this, though, the more the story of Kyle as a small physical separate self doesn't make any sense. And
Wow.
yeah.
And so of course that makes total sense that you're having events coming up this year.
Oh yeah.
The big one I saw, I'm going to have to come and see you over
Oh,
there
please
in
come.
Glendale. I'd
Yeah.
love to come and see you. And you have quite a few lined up for the year. And I guess the purpose for you to do those events is to show up through your process of evolving in that frequency that you are lifting yourself with. What can people expect when or hope for when they come and see you?
I mean, it's so funny because, I mean, the biggest comment we get from everyone that comes to it or works with me is, I wasn't expecting that. And the biggest point is that I don't expect anything either. I just know I'll show up. I have the job of being there and then starting. And I don't know the frequency that will come through. I don't know what'll happen. But the last 14 years have been nothing planned. The more I plan something, the more it's in the way of what wants to unfold. So I find that like if there's times where we'll make a video and a teammate will say, this video needs to be about this. And I'll try to do it and I'll be in my head because whatever
Mm.
wants to come through will come through. And so if I don't have any idea, it becomes miraculous. So we have a couple things. We have the event called the Big One. That's a 4-day event in Glendale. It is going to be so crazy. It's just a crazy unfolding of magic. And, it's really cheap too. Right now, they can get a 4-day event. I think tickets are like $2.99 or something like that. So a 4-day event for 70, 80 a day or something. But you won't be able to unsee that. If you felt any inspiration from this, wait till I have 5 more months of healing and then do that event. It's
Mm.
going to be crazy, and immerse yourself in the highest frequency you can to undo the shame and the guilt and the fears that are stuck in your body. That's all removable because it's not the truth. And when you access the truth of what you are, all shame, all guilt has to leave because it's not true. It's literally based on not being investigated and understanding something. And so we have this event called the Big One. My friend Aaron Abke and also my other friend Kim Durama will be a part of that event. Those two will be, probably a few other surprises too. And then our biggest thing is our Absolutely Everything Pass.
Mm.
We have the Absolutely Everything Pass, which is my membership site. That is so awesome because I do a live call on Sunday, a live call on Wednesday. We do a hot seat. We do all these other things. You riff with other people in the community, and you literally have 5, 6 events available a week. And there's a backlog of all of our live events. There's probably 1,000 hours of past content. These used to be $1,000 events. So they can get that if they want. That for the public is $7.99, but I have a coupon code for your listeners. If they
Ooh,
type in water with capital letters, I think
okay.
I think it's capital letters, type in water, it goes down to $2.99. So
Oh,
so it's $2.99 for a year. It will pay for itself within the first week. You will be watching me live. You will be able to go into a hot seat. We'll shift you. You can ask questions. We do Q&A and I do a call every Sunday, every Wednesday. We've been doing it. We're in our 6th year right now, and it's miraculous and it's crazy. And there's thousands of people on in a crazy supportive community, and we're all moving to our highest. So if anyone wants to join that, they go to absolutelyeverything.tv. It says $7.95, and if you type in water, it goes to $2.99.
that is such an amazing offer, Kyle. And thank you so much, both on behalf of the Eden Magazine and also, of course, the Heart of Show Business listeners. I love what you're doing because I think so many of you wonderful humans, of course, Red Beckwith is one of them as well. You are making all this accessible. You're not coming from a sort of pedestal, I am high and almighty stand. I think that era of the leaders, the spiritual leaders, community leaders, whatever we call them, the leaders in some way or the other, of being in a pedestal and not being accessible is over. We need to have access to you because we need to know that you're real. You are evolving out loud, just
Yeah,
like you said. I would rather be listening to you and relate to you because you are, here I am. I'm not perfect. I have my flaws, but I'm evolving and this is what I'm learning in the process. And if I can help you in some way, then that's great, right?
absolutely. I mean, I think that's the biggest point of what I'm here for, is to go, I make mistakes, I'm lost, I have shame, I have fears, and I don't want to even look at myself on a pedestal. I want to be authentic and open and scared and vulnerable too, because I find that by being that, I purge false aspects of myself and access a me that's even more powerful every day. Like, real unfolding isn't based on just force and willpower while you deny what's inside. It's really being authentic with yourself and releasing what you're not. And so I'm so proud of that part, because I do know it can be easy to put people on pedestals and see them as bigger than you. But we start to realize we put everyone, even our friends, on pedestals. When you look at
Mm.
their Instagram and they have this perfect marriage photo album, and you're like, oh, I wish I had that. And we just live in going, if you put someone else on a pedestal, you're taking yourself off of it. And you need
Oh,
to get that we're we're all on the ground and we're all a mess, and we're here to to fall into our mess, not just go, who's the one that has the answer for me and has everything perfect. And I promise you, from working with so many people, the ones that appear to have it perfect don't. I know them behind the scenes. We're all a mess and we're all working through it, and we all should be loved in our mess. And you don't have to be an image, and don't fall for anyone that shows a perfect image. We're all a mess, every person on this planet, because if you were done healing, you don't need to be on the planet. Like we have more to do, and there's gunk here, and we're in the school of Earth, and in the school of Earth, we have to heal as much as we can in this time without it being pressure. But we have this there's more here.
Oh my goodness. What a joy has been to have you on my podcast and on this interview, because I feel whenever I'm talking to people like yourself, it's like, oh gosh, life is so awesome. We have such variety of human beings, and we can learn from one another. And I almost don't even want to ask you my super last question that I asked to all my guests, which is to define yourself in 3 words, because how on earth I'm going to define or see you define yourself in 3 words? Maybe not. Maybe you want to choose window number 2, which is your life mantra. I don't know. You take a pick.
I would say all that is. I think that I and everyone watching, you're all that is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's no separate self. You're not a small being next to with some other person that's separate from you. You are all that is. You are them, and we're here to learn oneness.
Wow. And that is such a great ending to this podcast. Thank you, Kyle, for being on my show. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, rate, and review. But most of all, check out my show notes, because I will be dropping Kyle's website. Take advantage of this amazing offer of being part of his yearly access to everything that is Kyle and everything that he's about. So if you love this episode, give it a high rating, and thank you again, Kyle. And this is the Heart of Show Business, over and out.